We're taking you live to this now. The High Court in Pretoria is hearing the case by the EFF calling on the court to order the unsealing of the CR17 bank statements. EFF leader Julius Malema is adamant South Africans have the right to know who funded Cyril Ramaphosa's ANC presidential campaign and whether its donors are benefiting from state contracts. However, President Cyril Ramaphosa insists he is willing to lay all his cards on the table when it comes to his CR17 campaign funding documents. Let's take you there live.
What the applicant in these proceedings seeks to vindicate is a tenet of the rule of law, which is open justice. And under this, as the Constitution under Section 1, one of the founding values being universal adult suffrage and national common voters' roll, regular elections, and a multi-party system of democratic government to ensure accountability, responsiveness, and openness. So, again, when we go back and to look at the process by which the sealed parts of the record that was filed by the public protector, it was done in the chambers of the DJP. It was done not on application by any party. It was done on very broad stated confidentiality grounds. They are not explaining what is confidential about them, just plainly that they were confidential. And curiously, the directive then says any party that requires the seal to be lifted must then bring an application and do so in an open court. We say that too goes against the great about the facts. Might I just take your lordship to case line 011-19. That is where your lordship will see against 006-20 that it is a letter by the President's attorneys who make the claim under paragraph 5 that in view of the above directive, we kindly request that the following documents and or information contained in the record be sealed and not be made available to the public, as such document is confidential and relates to the personal affairs of the individuals mentioned in those documents. That's all it is said. And we come back and make the point that again, it is not within the province of any party to make its suggestions about how a public protector is to respond to a Rule 53 request or a compliance under Rule 53(1)(b) that it must file a record which support the report as well as the remedial action that it made. Your Lordship, might I invite you to look at again case line 011 and -18. Now we want to come to the facts because against this paragraph, this is the affidavit filed on behalf of the campaign, and it is deposed to by Mr. Chauke, Benjamin Chauke. Against paragraph 38 on case line 011-19 says, Mr. Chauke there on behalf of the CR17, the CR17 campaign brought together like-minded individuals to support the renewal of the ANC and the president's candidature as the ANC's president. So even in their own admission, they understood their activity and their actions to be aimed at making the president of the ANC. What are the facts too we can see against case line 011-19, the following. 011-20, the following. The CR17 says the CR17 campaigners campaign promotes the unity and renewal of the African National Congress. It seeks to restore the values and character of the ANC as a selfless champion of the South African people. In advancing this effort, says the affidavit, CR17 campaigns for the election of a leadership that has the concomitant capacity and integrity effectively lead the organization and the country. So even in their own language, they are mindful of the fact of the connection between what we are doing under that campaign as well as the assumption of public office as ultimately happened. Against paragraph 41 of the same page, they describe the broader political engagement and says the following. From the outset, the CR17 campaign determined that the campaign should not focus simply on promoting an individual's candidacy, and we say we accept that. Over the page, says Mr. Chauke, over the course of nearly a year, through its various communications channels, including its website, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, the CR17 campaign undertook a massive political education and conscientization campaign aimed not only at supporting the election of the president and others into the NEC, but also at shaping the ANC into a more effective and trusted popular movement. It continues against paragraph 43 to say, the CR17 campaign was just as interested in the character of the ANC that emerged from the 54th National Conference in December 2017, as it was with who was elected to its leadership. Now, the submission we're making is, if your Lordship accepts that even on the CR17 campaign's own case, what was at play was very plain. We are going to be getting private donations. We are going to use these donations to further the interests of a certain section of the ANC that held a particular belief. But its principal purpose was to do no less than ensure that ultimately the then Deputy President of the African National Congress becomes President, and as we say, by extension of law and the Constitution, will become the President of the Republic, as has happened. Now, against paragraph 21, of the affidavit, and perhaps let me step back and point to something that is very discernible from the reading of the affidavit by Mr. Chauke. If we look at a case line 011-9, that is paragraph 1 thereof, Mr. Chauke says this to us, that I'm a special advisor to the President of the Republic of South Africa, the President, and I stop there. So what Mr. Chauke tells us that is that he, having been the chairman of the CR17 campaign, he, having collected money for the purposes of getting the president to #1 position, is now a special advisor to the president. Now we're making the submission that on its own must then make a curious Joe public say, are there any dots to be connected arising from that fact? Now we know your historical past and your efforts have yielded the president into position #1 in the country, and you are now sitting as a special advisor and must be asking the question, what special advisor are you, and what interests as a special advisor are you giving must be furthered by the president in his public office. Now, we go to 011 and we get to -168, and this is what we find in the affidavit on behalf of the CR17 affidavit, or that deposed by Mr. Chawuge. 011-168. It gives us, against case line 011-168, we have the founding affidavit in the intervention application by the Ms. Donley Nicole, if I've pronounced that name correctly. She tells us there as well and we recall she was also a member of the CR17 campaign, and in that affidavit we are comfortable to say to your lordship that she describes the monies that were donated to the CR17 campaign by the trust, which elected the CR17 as one of the beneficiaries of that trust. She too was part of the individuals who was serving in the CR17 campaign, fundraising campaign. Can I now invite your lordship to look at case line 011-26 to 27. And see against paragraph 55. It reads, it was agreed by the CR17 fundraising committee that since this was a national campaign with political objectives, it will be open for any individual who cares about the future of the ANC, the future of the country, and supports the president's vision and candidacy for president of the ANC and the election of an ethical leadership of the NEC to contribute to the campaign. The contributions were made to the CR17 campaign. The individuals who contributed ranged from active members of the ANC to non-members of the ANC. But then says the applicant, we are entitled to know who those individuals are and what amounts were paid, because from there we can make an intelligent connection of dots to see whether or not the conduct in governance is in furtherance of the interests of those individuals or otherwise. Sorry, my lord. And I will find yes.
I thought it may be an appropriate time to take a short adjournment.
It would help me, my lord, to focus references.
Yes, thank you. Court will adjourn for 15 minutes.